Have you ever found yourself standing in front of the fridge after a stressful day, eating something you didn't even plan to eat? Or maybe you found yourself secretly eating snacks in the car and then feeling confused or even ashamed of yourself afterwards. And maybe you might think, "Oh, what's wrong with me?" But I'm here to tell you there is nothing wrong with you. What you're experiencing isn't a lack of willpower or discipline. It's a part of you that's just trying to help. And once you understand these parts, everything about emotional eating starts to make sense. Today, we're diving into the concept of emotional eating parts, a way to understand the inner workings of why we turn to food in moments of stress, sadness, or even boredom. This isn't about blaming yourself or fixing anything that's broken. It's about getting curious about these parts of you and learning how to work with them, not against them. So let's start with what I mean by emotional eating parts. Now, this idea comes from a therapeutic approach called internal family systems, or IFS for short. But don't worry, you don't need to be a therapist or a psychologist to understand this. IFS just makes sense. When I learned about IFS, it just made so much sense and really helped me understand my own emotional eating, which is why I reference it now. So IFS teaches us that our minds aren't just one singular voice. Instead, we have different parts inside of us, like a cast of characters, each with its own thoughts, feelings, and ways of helping us cope with life. So when it comes to emotional eating, certain parts of us take on the role of managing our feelings through food. So for example, you might have a part that eats to comfort you when you're sad or when you're stressed, or another part that just rebels against dieting rules and binges on all the forbidden foods. These parts aren't bad or wrong. They're just trying to help you in the best way they know how. But sometimes their strategies can make weight loss feel impossible or even lead to more frustration. Because here's the thing, if you don't understand these parts, it's easy to feel stuck or out of control around food. And you might think, I just need to stop overeating. But then find yourself doing it anyway. That's because the part of you that's overeating doesn't feel understood. It's trying to send you a message. And when you try to ignore or silence that part, it usually speaks up even louder. But when you take the time to get curious about these parts, everything changes. You can start to see their good intentions. Maybe the stress eater is trying to calm you down after a chaotic day, or the comfort eater is helping you feel safe when life just feels overwhelming. And when you meet these parts and learn what they're really trying to do for you, it's like flipping on a light switch in a dark room. Suddenly you can see things so much clearer, and that's when real change becomes possible. This is especially important for weight loss because if we only focus on eating less or sticking to the plan without really understanding why these parts turn to food in the first place, we're not addressing the root of the issue. And weight loss that feels forced or filled with struggle rarely lasts. But when you work with your parts, it's not about force, it's about partnership. So let's talk about how these parts can either help or hinder your weight loss. So for example, if you have a part that believes food is your only source of comfort, that part might sabotage your efforts to eat in a balanced way because it's scared of losing its coping tool. But on the other hand, when you connect with this part, you can reassure it and help it find new ways to feel comforted that don't always involve food. The more you get to know these parts, the more you'll realize they aren't trying to sabotage you. They're only trying to protect you. They're stuck in old patterns that once worked, but maybe aren't serving you anymore. By working with these parts, you can help them update their strategies instead of working against them. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Emotional eating isn't just about food. It's about understanding the parts of you that are turning to food to help you navigate life. When you get to know those parts, you can start to respond with curiosity instead of frustration. And that's where the magic happens. In the next video, we'll meet one of the most common emotional eating parts, the stress eater. And I'll show you how to recognize it, why it shows up, and what it really needs from you. So trust me, you don't want to miss this. So if this video is making you think, Well, that just explains an awful lot. Or, I never thought about it that way before. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series. And if you feel like sharing, let me know in the comments. What part of you do you think might be driving your emotional eating? I would love to hear from you. All right, I will see you in the next video where we will meet the stress eater.